Welcome to Community Connected Health. I am your host, Skip Lowe, joined with
Colton Storla.
Hey, buddy. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
Yeah. How about this? Things are flying along here in episode 9.
And Skip's still wearing a suit.
Still wearing a suit.
He's not lying.
Same suit, different tie, right? So, as I always like to do in these moments, it's kind of eclectic Eddie and the Flapjacks here, but really excited. I get ahead of myself on these things. We've had some really incredible guests, and today is just another special edition. And joining us today is a fine gentleman by the name of Matt Ohrt. I always ask where people are from, and he kind of was a little shy in his answer, and he's, like everyone else, like, oh, I'm from a place you've never heard of. I'm like, well, try me. And so from Cloutier, Iowa, which is in God's country, Tama County, beautiful area up there. And for people that don't know, it's actually historically has a presence in my mind anyway, and several other antique collectors. It was one of the well-known places in the country for lightning rod balls. And there was a salesman up there, so it was very colorful. And so for those of you who want to talk to me about that in another episode, we'll start taking some calls here, but let's go ahead and get started here. And just a reminder, the format we've put together is just for everybody. And I've had people contacting me. I've been blown away. I told Logan, who's our wonderful producer and puts up with a lot of my stuff here. So appreciate you, Logan. That being said, the format we've put together is just, it's for all walks of life. And I've had people that have contacted me that were students at colleges and said, hey, I checked out your podcast, and you made me a believer, buddy. I appreciate you. You're my conduit.
Gotta spread the word far and wide.
Yeah.
It's the best way to do it.
Yeah. Conduit to popular culture, Colton Storla here. So he really helped me out on this. And so, the idea was for CFOs, CEOs, HR folks that are just kind of fed up, frustrated with healthcare and the delivery system. And, newsflash, folks, this thing's just not going to miraculously correct itself. We all have to jump into this, the struggle that we're in. And it certainly is a big one, but some great things. And Matt's going to serenade us today about what's happening in his world. And he's an author. I've already told him where he's from. I'm going to let him introduce himself. So today's episode is about real-world employer experience, what it's like to actually manage healthcare inside a company. And so we've had pharmacists on this call or on this podcast. We've had physicians. We've had people that are CEOs, CFOs from large medical groups. And so this is just another perspective. But he's got a dual role because not only is he maybe a triple role. He's an author, but he's also has experience as an employer. And now he is the executive director of the Free Market Medical Association. So he's going to give us his real world experiences as well as what he's seen, because now he gets to talk to great people like us. And so, Matt, maybe just a quick bio about yourself. What happened to your Michigan garb, by the way? It's usually, there it is. I see a little sticker over your shoulder there, right? Go Blue. So, why don't you just start just a minute or so, just tell us a little bit about your background, and then we're just going to throw this all together and talk about what's going on in the exciting world of healthcare the way you see it.
Yeah, go Blue, go Hawkeyes. Those are my two probably favorite college teams. I was disappointed to see the Hawkeyes got beat, but they did really well. So you got to look at the positive side. They made it far. So great to join you guys, fellow friends and colleagues from Iowa. Grew up on the family farm, Cloutier, Iowa, mile outside of town, population 219. So I think it's been 219 for like 50 years. So I don't know if they...
Not 219,000, 219.
No, they don't change the sign much. I'm not even sure it's still standing, so I'd have to drive back and see. And maybe I will. I'm actually going
You might
that way.
still be included in the count, is what you're saying.
Yeah, 218, I guess, right? So, great to join you guys. So I do wear a lot of hats. I've got a lot of kind of pieces and parts glued together, but I think it fits me in my role. I've always had a very adventurous personality and entrepreneurial spirit, and my real passion is to help people. I started out, I had a construction business actually for 7 years, and I could have just carried that and built houses the rest of my life. And But I went to grad school, and then I followed the normal path, I guess, going into industry. And I had some really cool experiences with companies like Toyota and so forth. But I would say there was always kind of a tension as that you put an entrepreneur in a corporate setting, and there's always kind of I'm always trying to fix stuff and change stuff and help people. And corporations don't always like that. They like smooth, you got to have 8 signatures to make changes. And I'm not sure it was a perfect fit for me, but I pulled a lot away from it and a lot of experience and friendships and relationships. But just the last quarter of that almost 25 HR year career, I started with a company called Merrill Steel. And we ended up, through some frustrations they shared, I was empowered, if you will. I didn't have all the corporate red tape. And we built a story that we'll dig in today a little bit. And it became one of those kind of stories that inspired people, I think. And because it was real and it actually happened. And from there, I've spread my wings a little bit and co-founded a couple of health plans and started kind of leading a movement as the Wisconsin chapter leader. And then last summer became the executive director for the Free Market Medical Association, which gives me a bigger scope and bigger reach and just a bigger chance to do kind of maybe my dream type work, right? Go out and help people and educate and shake the tree a little bit and of the powers that be that maybe are hurting a lot of folks and maybe just looking out for themselves, breaking the golden rule. So that kind of brings me to today, where I wear all those hats, but having fun. And my ultimate mission is that I want to fix healthcare for America. That's what I put before anything else. So if you ever talk to me, I'm not interested in fancy boardroom presentations, which I had to stomach for decades. I always kind of cringed on those. I'm not here to impress anyone. I'm not here to, right? I'm just here to make a difference, I guess. So that's my motive.
So was kind of your first interaction with, healthcare when you were at Merrill Steel and you realized that there was a problem that needed to be solved? Was that kind of when things were, brought to the forefront?
I think that was my first role. I had been kind of the number 2 or 3 HR person in really large companies, if you will. And that was my first time that I was holding the reins. I was kind of in charge. I had a little more freedom, and then I was empowered by the owners. The first 2/3 of my career, I led the enrollment meetings. I went through those, and I did kind of that normal wash, rinse, repeat kind of thing. And then we, boy, this sucks. Boy, it sucks for all of us. And I guess there's nothing we can do about it. And I guess we'll just move on, and my eyes were opened when I got into that VP of HR role for some kind of aha moments. And that sparked a journey that is, really sprouted my second career. I'm no longer an HR leader in manufacturing. I think I kind of see the world that way, right? I always will, because I did it for so long.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really glad that happened. I enjoyed what I did, but I'm enjoying this a lot more.
Do you want to talk about some of those aha moments?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's other people that maybe would have had those same aha moments, or they just need to have them. They just haven't come yet.
I think, those are cool when, we've got to open our mind and open our eyes and be willing to see those moments and just ask the questions, ask the hard questions. Is this working? Right? Is this healthcare thing really working? And I think if we're all to give an honest answer, we'd be like, no, not really, right? This is pretty broken. We're seeing this just constant step back, step back, constant decline, constant unraveling of the health plan. Ironically, mine happened. So when I joined Merrill Steel, the CFO had led the healthcare, which is a great person to lead the healthcare, along with HR in terms of the people side. But the CFO, right, they understand money. So we're going to talk a lot about money. And he was getting close to retirement, though. So they hired me. They actually hired me to help change the culture as well. And healthcare became the focus, ironically, which did help the culture. But so we did both. But one of the aha moments was that we had brought the custodial services in-house. We realized we could hire and give someone their dream job. And instead of like 10 hours a month or a week, we had 40. And we're like, we'll just hire a person and give him benefits. We found that guy. He was loving it, right? He was a custodian. This vacuum we had, this sounds kind of silly, but this industrial vacuum broke, and we fixed it 3 times and so forth. And so we said, okay, we'll get a new one, right? This is not really a big decision for a company that size. Gross sales around 300 million at the time. So I think I called the sales rep. Within about 10 minutes, we had the same vacuum, the new version picked out. I want to say it was around $350. The story's in my book. And pretty simple. So I walked three doors down to the purchasing manager, and I said, you want me to put this on my HR card, or do you want to, how do you want to pay for this vacuum, right? It's not really an HR expense per se. So he said, here's a little packet, fill this out, and every company I think has this, by the way, and this is a good thing. But have you ever filled out one of those packets where, right, get 3 estimates and and so I'm filling that out that afternoon, but I'm starting to get a little frustrated because I'm like, I already know which vacuum. Just trust me to make this, but I'm filling it out. And I realized that morning I had talked with the CFO prior, but this was really right after I started. We hadn't improved anything yet. We had one plan that was a deductible of like $8,000. So we didn't have a healthy health plan yet. We did have low premiums we were protecting. $160 a month for family and $40 a month for single, which, by the way, that was 2016. Merrill Steele's premiums are still there today. So as I was filling out this paperwork, I realized that I had just signed our stop loss insurance agreement renewal for that morning. And I didn't have any purchasing packet. I didn't talk with the CEO or the owners of the company. I had a nod from the CFO, and that amount was $700,000 with my signature on it. And I thought, man, so this company is viewing a $350 vacuum as a purchase, which it is, but we didn't really view that $700,000 as a purchase, did we? It was like something else. It was some mysterious insurance thing, and it was off the radar. And talk about being, so then I started looking into it, and I'm realizing this is actually our 3rd biggest business expense, healthcare, of everything, not HR expense, business expense. And I don't think we're managing this business expense like we should. And you tell that to a CEO and their eyes open up, right? Or a CFO, and they're like, wow, right? That's a new perspective. So that was one of probably the biggest aha moment I think that I can recall, and that led to me talking to everyone and anyone I could. And I just started asking 1,000 questions. And the more I learned, the more I realized that the solution wasn't going to be found in the box, that the box was a controlled monopoly made up of big insurance, big hospitals, and big broker houses. And they weren't interested in changing their game. The analogy I've been giving recently in my stories, change, just try to stay fresh. But you guys aren't spring chickens, right? But did you ever grow up playing Monopoly, or am I just?
Yeah.
Okay, so
classic.
I'm 52. I'm not that old, but right. Did you ever have that family member that always won? Like, they're like, it's your dad or your brother or somebody, and they're just running everybody into the ground. And you're like, hey, can I borrow $50 because I landed on the wrong railroad? And they've got hotels on everything, and they're just laughing. And at the end of the game, how does Monopoly end? There's one winner, and everyone else is run into the ground bankrupt.
Yeah.
You say, oh, that was fun. So and so won again. The problem is that's a game. And here, I bet these big these healthcare executives were probably those guys running their families into the ground. Now they're doing it in real life, and they're really good at it.
Yeah.
But the problem is the monopoly serves the seller, and the buyers are living under a bridge if they're not careful.
Yeah, I would say, Skip and I, we can resonate with that aha moment that you have, because, we're the ones that were meeting with the employers and kind of delivering those bad news on behalf of the insurance carriers that we were representing. And it's never an easy conversation, because it's, hey, your costs are going up. We can raise deductibles. We can limit networks. We can shop plans. And it's just this constant cycle of either changing carriers or changing deductibles. And at the end of the day, the business loses, and whoever's on the plan or the members, they lose too.
You feel, yeah, if you're stuck in that box, which many are even financially tied, these big houses are tied there, right? They literally can't leave because it's a whole new model. But it's really like, would you like choice A that's really bad, or choice B that's a little bit suckier and
less bad?
Choice C,
That's what I say. You want to choose the least bad option here
less
on the
horrendous
spreadsheet.
And so I realized if I was going to make a splash, I was going to have to get out of that box. I saw an email recently from a broker, and it literally said I should frame this, and I certainly won't say who. But if this is what's happening, it said, "Good news!" exclamation point. I've gotten your renewal down to 12%.
Yeah.
And it said, "Good news!" That should be framed. If that's what's happening across the country, then folks, we have a lot better news than that, right? We have now proven ways to control that.
Yeah.
Well, there's just so much frustration in this business, as you well know. And for us as brokers and consultants, it's amazing how we will come in with these, fresh ideas, and we think they're innovative. And if they can slow down and absorb it, but we're fighting the machinery at a lot of these organizations where it's an emotional decision, and it's been presented to them over the years as so complex, and they may have had an opportunity to go to another carrier, and it was a bad experience, and so they're relying on that bad experience. And the pressure is on us in this business more than it ever has been, because we're dealing with people that have $3,000 family premiums or premium equivalents, and so they're asking us for everything under the sun to come to them. But then we present these ideas, and then there's just the skepticism. It's like they fall in love with the price, and then they're like, this is just too good to be true. And it's hard for people to put their skepticism on the shelf. But, it's people like you is what we need, Matt, so we can talk about getting some referrals after this discussion. But the point is, you had that kind of that moment, that aha moment, as Colton said. And so I'm just curious, when you had that aha moment and you called up your agent or your consultant, whatever they're called, flavor of the day, what was their response, and what was the pushback that you felt that like, oh, no, this is fine. This black box over here.
This is the way it is.
This is the way it is. And you can try that, but you're just not going to just morbidly curious about what was the initial reaction? Were they like, oh yeah, we're all in on this? Or was it like, oh, well, we're fighting the big man here, and they're just not going to be nice to us?
Yeah, we had an advisor, and I think the one gentleman the reason that advisor was hired had kind of retired, and so we had the firm still with us. But overall, they did a good job. They were really good at playing in the sandbox. Mm-hmm. The problem is, right, there's no solutions in the sandbox, but they were really good at that. I had this, they humored me and did all my requests. I said I want a dashboard as we started progressing. I want a packet every month, and they did it. And a lot of firms can't even do those things. But there was kind of a frustration there that I was sensing. I said, I want to go forward. I want to be more strategic, and I want your ideas. And I said that to all of our partners. We had a local coalition that we used as a network. Our PBM was one of the Buca PBMs, which I think I had 2 phone calls with them, and I left mad and frustrated because my questions never got answered. This was all kind of building for a couple of years. Remember, I'm going through the learning process here, so I don't talk like I do today, where 10 years later, I've learned all these things. I'm like really learning as I go through this, and lots of things are happening. So, but there was one morning where I realized I'm like, and I was younger at the time, 40, in my 40s, but I'm like, I feel like I'm dragging all my partners that I'm paying. I feel like I'm dragging them along. I want them to be like, hey, I did this today, Matt, and I did this today. And they're all like just in this status quo. I wasn't, we're doing we had like brought in DPC, and I'm excited about some of these initiatives. There was one morning I woke up like at 4:30. This story's in the book as well, right? And I can't sleep. And I'm like, I got a lot going on today. I'm like, I'm just going to go into work. Like, So I go in, and now the shop's starting at 5 a.m. There's weld, lights flashing, and I mean, they're early birds. But the office, and with the exception of a couple that came from the shop, they're in the office at that time. I normally am not moving around at 5 a.m. But I go in, and it's this, if you imagine this dark corporate office, right? Dark, 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 nobody there except a couple people scattered in this monstrous office. And so I pour myself it's like, and this is like 25 below, by the way, one of those days. So I'm not even awake yet. I pour myself a hot cup of coffee. I'm just sitting at my desk with my light on and, complete silence. And I got up and I drew on this monster whiteboard I had. I started listing out my partners, my health plan partners. There's about 7-ish or so. And I just sat down and I looked at that and I said, who's with me on this thing, right? Who can I trust? Who's going forward with me? Because I'm getting worn out trying to drag the people that I'm paying, who are just actually more fighting to not change versus change. Change is hard. But I only had one yes on that whole board, and it was the DPC we had just brought in. Only had one yes. And that was another aha moment. I realized that, in this we're already self-funded. We're going to have to, right, unbundle, as they say, and bundle back, or build a custom health plan. I said, I'm going to have to change all these partners. These are not bad folks. I would have a beer with them. I'd have a brat with them. In Wisconsin, we have cheese curds and brats. I would do that. They're fun people. Don't get me wrong. They're fun neighbors. But they've jumped into the system, and these advisors, for instance, right? Go build a book. We'll support you kind of in this transitional phase for a couple of years. You build a book, or you don't eat. Go build a book.
Yeah.
There's not really a lot of thought. Is this really helping people or whatever? Go build your book, right? But we ended up, over the next couple of years, we changed all of those partners, and even my HR team was hesitant. And they're like, "What in the world is going on?
Yeah.
What are you doing?"
Yeah.
And people would almost felt like they were mocking me. They're like, "Oh, you're a mover and a shaker. You're really," and before Matt was known in anything or anyone by it, you know what I mean? And you just feel so alone. And so, but as we built that model out, about 3 years later, in fact, one of the third generation owners who was on my team, she said, "Matt, can I tell you something?" She shut the door. She said, "I thought you were, honestly, when you came in, I knew you were optimistic, but I thought you were full of it. Because you said, we're going to fix this and this and this and this and this." And she said, "But we actually did. And I just want to thank you for that." Right. So, but it took 2 or 3 years before people actually believed it. So the good news is you have to go through a little bit of that within your company, but a lot of this is built now. We have methods and we have proven partners. And so we don't have to blaze the trail into the darkness. A lot of that trail has been blazed now. So you can feel encouraged because of that.
Yeah, I feel like the key part to that, and what Skip and I spend a lot of time with talking with our own clients and even prospective clients, is that exact thing. Which vendors are against you and which ones are with you. Because in a carrier model, their whole deal is, how can we maximize profitability? When the employer, what do they want? Well, we want to provide the best benefit possible for least amount of money or premium possible. And so obviously those are conflicting goals there. And there's so many vendors out there now, independent TPAs, PBMs, networks, non-networks, so on and so forth. But even there's bad apples across the fruited plain, because there's a lot of people that are getting into the business for the wrong reasons. And so being able to sniff those things out.
I think that the trickiest part too, and I have a whole chapter in the book called Trusted, focuses on trusted partners, right? As in revelations like, we'll hire a $300 an hour lawyer. That may be a cheap lawyer, right? To review our BUCA contract, or why would I review a contract from people I don't trust? So then the second I look away, they're going to change more things so they can make more money. Why don't I just find people that I actually trust, and I don't have to pay that lawyer to be a watchdog?
Yep.
Kind of that kind of feeling of trustworthy partners. The weird thing too is I think a lot of, especially the big house advisor firms and others, they're seeing a trend, and they're seeing that our national movement is gaining pretty good momentum. And I would say a caution to employers, there's a lot of fancy fakers out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, we're navigating. Oh yeah, we're doing all that. And then no, they're not. They're not doing, they just want to look like they are. So, and that's like in the 90%, right? This is not like a small percentage. So it's so hard for employers. I think you got to find someone that truly is trustworthy, have them come alongside and then sort all these things out, because the fancy fakers are quite good at what they do.
Yeah, I would say,
but they're bullshit and they're empty, and they're supporting a clandestine system, and they'd love to be that dad that drives the family into the ground. How does the game of Monopoly end? It doesn't get close to the end and be like, I'm sorry, guys, here's some more money back because I want to keep this game going. No, like, I'm driving you into the ground. You're going to be completely bankrupt and I win. Have a nice night. Let's have some supper now. So
lot of, I feel a lot of pressure on that. I hear what you're saying. I was not good at Monopoly, but I did handily beat my brother-in-law like 3 times in a row, and I was laughing just because he was spiking the ball on me. But you point out something. You referenced. I always wanted to do a video of me being a CFO and having a broker come in and say, "Hey, I got great news for you. I got your renewal down to 4 or 5%." But it's amazing how many people are like, "Oh, I thought it was going to be a lot worse," and we've just conditioned the market to think that, "Oh, this is." Well, I've been hearing stories, and it's a lot worse out there, and there certainly are some truth to that. But we're seeing the machinery out there, the large buka carriers. They're really pushing back, and I don't know how sustainable that is. We're seeing the stop loss market. Some people say it's in peril. It definitely is stressed. You've probably heard a little bit about that as well. But I'm 5 years into this with Colton, and I wasn't like skeptical when we started talking about these concepts, because he'd done his homework and was really good at networking and got us involved in the FMMA. The frustration we see in Iowa, which you may agree or disagree on, is it's been a little slower to adopt. And so we have a monolithic system here that's, it's hard to crack into, but we are starting to see a lot more DPCs, and we're starting to get a little bit more energy in our sale, just because we've had case studies and we're getting the people. I mean, we're going to Health Rosetta. We've got a couple of clients that have been nominated for the Rosie Awards that are, true blue Iowans, and they're beyond drinking the Kool-Aid. They're getting into the turkey with the rest of us here. But my whole comment to this, and I'll sum it up, is that I just feel a pressure of there's a lot of fight going out there with the big brokerage houses, and they're trying to put in doubt into the minds of people, and they say, "Oh well, don't you want stability?" and that whole thing. And so there's a psychological impact, and so it's. I feel the pressure is really raising, because if they did adopt these principles and the carriers did decide to be flexible, because it's long in the tooth 75-year-old system as it is, it'd be almost like admitting that they didn't really do the best job they could have.
Yeah, I feel like in a lot of different marketplaces where we talked about Health Rosetta, there's, a lot of very good consultants that we interact with and collaborate with that are doing a lot of great things in their communities. And the other brokers that are part of these big houses and their communities, they just learn just enough about their product to then go into their client meeting and say, well, this is why you don't want to do these things. So it's just learning enough to be dangerous to kind of sell against it to then keep you with the big insurance carriers. And we've run across that a couple times where we've had a prospect meeting. They weren't a client of ours. We educated them on some of these concepts. And then we follow up, and it's like, oh, well, we talked to our broker about that, and this is why we're not going to. So they just put up these shields, and it's a trust factor. And we obviously love that they're loyal and trustworthy, but, sometimes they're being lied to.
They're so good at what they do, aren't they? And I've watched them lie directly to employers more than many times right in front of me. And I think they've gotten so used to that. They've actually developed a skill to stop improvement instead of to drive improvement. And it is, a lot of times I think I talk to physicians every day. I talk to advisors and many others, employers, and they feel alone. And I remember that feeling right? This may or may not work. I guess I look at the perspective, and not how old we are, how much time do we have left? My dad, who was an Iowa farmer, passed away at 74 about 3 years ago. And I had one perspective, right? I'm 52. So if I could live longer, his dad lived in his early 90s, but if I die when my dad died, I have 22 years of life left. Now, Skip always outdresses me and he makes me laugh and he says he's casket ready. I'm not casket ready right now, but that means I have 22 years, not of career, but actually of life. And why not go out there and try something and take some chances and make a splash? I can tell you in Wisconsin, right? I was alone at Merrill Steele's. Eventually, of course, when you succeed, everyone's like, I'm so glad we did this. We really rocked it. Like, and I was like, where were you the last 5 years? Like they join you at the end.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But in central Wisconsin, which is a rural part of the state, Wisconsin's only 6 million people anyway, but kind of like Iowa, the big cities aren't even really that big, which I like, by the way. Central Wisconsin came alive. We had around 40 after the Merrill Steele story, and I was sharing that story a little bit, just like in a few places. We had about 40 employers that had DPC after a few years in. We started out in 16. We had something like 12 DPCs in the whole state.
Mm-hmm.
And then we looked around and we said, wow, there's area, Green Bay, Appleton is about 1 million people, Oshkosh, Milwaukee's pretty big, Madison's pretty big. We look around to the areas of the state that were much more populated, completely asleep on this game, completely asleep. So little old rural central Wisconsin is alive and active in healthcare improvement. The rest of the state's asleep. So I just say that based on your comment about Iowa being resistant.
Yeah.
So what we do, we started going out and having brush fire regional meetings, and we draw pretty good. My story kind of brought them in a little bit, but we'd have about 100 people sometimes in those meetings. And we'd just share the story and we'd share the same things we're talking about today. And if you look at Wisconsin today, we've got 140-ish DPCs. We didn't have any imaging throughout the state. We had to call in that truck that the hospitals use. But we have now in imaging throughout the state. We have surgery centers in most areas of the state. Maybe you got to drive an hour or two at most. But the doctors jumped in. So with the right energy, right, you're going against the grain, and there's a lot of people telling you can't do it. But with the right energy, it can be done. So I just want to encourage people like everyone listening and people in the work that Colton and you and Skip and you guys are doing.
And like you said, it was a 3-year deal for you. You don't just snap your fingers and then it just happens. You are constantly, making change, seeing how that change went, make another change, see how that change went. And you're getting data and you're just solving problems as they come up. So sometimes when we're talking to employers, they just, this seems like a lot of change. This seems like a lot of work. And it's like, yes, it is a lot of work. It's one of your largest expenses. But I mean, the work is meaningful because it impacts your business and it impacts the people that you employ. But I think I just had this conversation yesterday with an employer, and I love that you brought that up, is they've taken this step by moving from a big insurance carrier, unbundling, doing DPC and all these things. They saw the reward of it right away in the first year. They were skeptical, but now they've renewed and they're in year 2, and now they've got that fire under them like, hey, what can we do better? And I told them, yesterday, actually, part of that is telling your story to other employers, because the more employers we can get on to these types of models, the more it's going to benefit them. And so I've just encouraged them to tell that story. But then you mentioned earlier the culture piece. And maybe even before we get into the culture piece, what were some of the changes that you made within your health plan as you were looking at that whiteboard of vendors that really impacted your plan?
Yeah, I think, this isn't for everyone, by the way, right? So you'll know when you talk to employers, you gotta feel the pain enough and have someone with the temerity and the courage. And so this isn't Free Market Medical Association are a bunch of courageous leaders mustering together. So that's one of the things. If someone's constantly a downer and constantly fearful, then we still love them and they can be our friend, but they're not going to be a change leader. And so now I've just forgotten your question. Oh my goodness.
As you were looking at the whiteboard and you're looking at the vendors, what were some of the kind of the immediate changes that you saw, bottom line impact, or
Yeah.
improvements in the healthcare situations that your employees were in?
Yeah. Sorry. So need another cup of coffee here. We made incremental changes. It was, with a very in every step, we ended up building a plan that had like 30 pieces. We changed our partners to be trustworthy. But the very first step we took was DPC. Now we happen to be big enough to be on site. That it doesn't have to be on site at all. It can be near site, right? So that was just what we did. There's advantages and disadvantages to that, but near site's just fine. But we did DPC. We invested $250,000. I served as the general contractor to minimize the construction costs. But we had the CFO came to me and said, we've gotten that $250,000 return. We didn't expect this. I thought we'd take one step, we'd measure 1 year later. It was in my head. Well, the first quarter closed. He comes back 5 months later smiling, Matt, we just paid for that clinic and then some. Can you do some more of this? So then we said, okay, well, physical therapy is like, I call it even DPT, direct physical therapy. We ended up putting a little room next to the primary clinic. This is the primary care of musculoskeletal. We can support people through that. We can prevent surgeries. A lot of the surgeries that happen in the hospitals, by the way, guys, as you probably well know, the listeners are not necessary. You ask a surgeon in the hospital if you need surgery, you're going to get a surgery. You ask the independent ones, they'll give you a more honest answer. We did that. So then, and even when then we added on-site MRI. We put in a plug. We could have, at the time, it was just this semi. But we realized if that semi was parked at the hospital plugged in there, that it was $5,000. But if it was parked at our building, it was $500.
Amazing.
So there's a lot of money flowing around that wasn't going to value. So then we started looking at our health plan design. We said, wow, how do we get people to do this? Right. You guys good at math. My wife tells me about girl math all the time. She's got some pretty special girl math going on, but I always say 70% of people are good at math. The other 40% are, and I'm not sure which part I fall into. But we realized that it was better for the plan, right? This year's claims or next year's premiums. Mm-hmm. It's better for the plan to spend 100% of 500 than 80% of $5,000. I can do that.
Yeah.
Right. So the plan wins every time. And guess what? We can give it away to the patient. Imagine that, free MRIs. And then I went down and I got a chance to meet Keith Smith and the Surgery Center of Oklahoma. Now we have much closer options today. But that was what we were aware of at the time. And we could get a hip replacement at the time it was right on, their prices are right online, just like Solstice Health and many others, Renovo, $15,000 and something, bundled price. So even before the renewal, I'm like, I'm not waiting for renewal on this. We're doing this outside the plan. We'll just write them a check. We're self-funded. We'll just write them a check. I wouldn't recommend that long-term, but I'm like, I'm not waiting another 9 months to, right? So I said, all right, we got free hip surgeries. In fact, we give you $2,500 if you go. Yeah. We'll cover all your travel, right? This sounds kind of insane if this isn't a thing yet, right? And there was some across the country. And so then the PT traveled with the first one. He was the companion, making sure they were okay with it, of course. But I want you to see this experience. I want you to see how it goes. We put them in first class, but they're still in a commercial airport after a hip replacement. Well, we did 3 of those. And we could actually put money in their pocket. They didn't go broke. They'd been putting it off. They're limping around because they can't afford it.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Put money in their pocket. And I started seeing these stories like this. They're walking around the business, by the way, and they're telling everybody.
There you go. Yep.
That was pretty amazing. So that's part of that change management.
Yeah.
That's really that was a seminal moment for me when we were really working hard. It took a long time to really launch a custom health plan, but once we did, and one of my favorite stories is an ag manufacturer, and I show up casket ready in my suit and tie, and they're all like, "Oh, this guy's going to be something else." And it took a lot of convincing, and then the HR director said, "Hey, would you guys be open to coming back up here in the middle of the year to tell us about the program again, just to re-educate people?" But that water cooler moment, right, where people are going, "Hey, this really worked out well for me." We've had people, in tears to say I didn't have to pay $5,000 for a medication, or they didn't necessarily say that they made money on the deal, but and then the employers, they're bought in big time, because they're like, yeah, we didn't really know that this was going to work out, but we were so desperate we just wanted to try something, and that's where we're at. And I think we've set the table in this business, and so the Free Market Medical Association has been really a good conduit for us to get out there to talk to other like-minded advisors and the movement. And like you said, it's join the movement.
Yeah.
And so those types of stories are going to resonate, especially in small town Iowa where you grew up. And you always know who the good folks are, and the folks that are just wasting your time pretty quickly in the small towns. That's why a lot of folks stay away from those places. But
we're good at filtering, aren't we? We
really
right away.
Yeah. I mean, you certainly get beat up on the bad news. I mean, Don Henley said it best, or sang it best. Kick them while they're up and kick them while they're down. And you've got your skeptics out there, but there's a lot of work that goes into this too. I mean, this is not like, oh, it's all built, ready to go. I mean, you've got to have some intellectual capital to figure these things out. But the market is adjusting. There's been some really good wins, and there's been some not so good wins. And as an employer, and you've got your employer hat on here for a few minutes in this discussion, and now as the executive director of the Free Market Medical Association, I think what we run into is that if people try to deploy all these strategies at once, it can go wrong, right? I mean, it can frustrate the employer, and like, oh, we just need to go back to our BUCA. But what advice do you have, or what you're seeing that's really working? Is it tear the Band-Aid off, or is it, do we just walk, crawl, then walk, run?
There are some models, which I co-founded, Self-Fund Health, Rise Up Health, where we can go in and change it all at once. But I would say in most cases outside of those, it's better to think of always this as a long haul, right? This is not a quick fix. This is a take one step, take the next. I did stuff out of order at Merrill Steel that I would like, wow, I should have did this way before I did that, right?
Yeah.
Because I was learning. And so there's kind of a logical order. But even if you're taking one step a year, it's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you may have to still carry 90% of those traditional things. This isn't like just all or none. You start gaining momentum when you're just real about it. Lose the boardroom talk, lose the fake talk, just be real. Look them in the eye and say, I'm on this plan too. I want to improve it because I'm on this plan too. Mm-hmm. And if it fails, I also am suffering, right? So let's try this. We can't stay where we are. We got to go somewhere. And then, year 2, year 3, you start watching these enrollment meetings. Instead of this check out after 2 minutes, we've changed the structure. People are like pulling up their shirt. Look at my diabetes monitor. And then like, I had this hernia surgery, and like, oh, you don't have to share everything. And so, but they're like really excited.
Yeah.
And those are, I call them milestone moments. You need some like rewards along the way, right? Because the middle gets hard. The beginning, it's excited. When you see a finish line, I'm not sure you're ever really done, but you see the finish line, you're excited. That middle, I call it the desert. That middle, right? The exodus out of Egypt, that was a long 40 years, and they wanted to go back. And the Red Sea was parted, and guess what? The Red Sea closed back up because they probably would have went back to their slavery because it was known and comfortable. But I think if you have those milestones along the way, it keeps you going. It's like, oh, okay, we got this far, and we got this far, and we won't go back, right? Mm-hmm. So it's so hard. Change management, I would say, is maybe 50% of this whole challenge.
Yeah, agreed.
It's not to be underestimated, along with figuring out the healthcare dynamics. But the people part is a big deal.
And maybe that's a good first step, is just doing exactly what you did. Get a whiteboard out or a piece of paper and write down all the vendors that are involved in your health plan. Figure out which ones are either with you or against you. Right. And I think part of that is asking for contracts that are in place between you and, whatever insurance carrier, network, or PBM, so on and so forth. And if they won't give you the contract or any data, then there's your, first couple red flags.
There you go. Yeah. Are they really working for you? They're
Yep.
doing well.
And then it's
I think,
diving into the data and figure out, well, what's the biggest need? Is it pharmacy? Is it cancer solutions? Is it MSK solutions? Is it DPC? And then let's start to plug and play from there.
I think one of the common mistakes, which is very understandable, which I've made it, and we've all made this mistake, right? But we would sit in management meetings, or there'd be a small group of people saying, "This is really broken. This is really frustrated." We understand the problem. We've detached from the problem. We're ready to move forward. Then we get in front of the majority of the workforce, and we act like they've been in all those discussions. They don't even know what we're talking about. They realize healthcare is broken, but all those conversations need to happen on a monthly or very regular basis. Are you experiencing this? Are you experiencing surprise bills? Are you experiencing exorbitant bills? Are you experiencing high deductibles, high premiums? Are you frustrated about this?
Yeah.
We're looking at some ways, right? You got to have your group that you're leading through the change. You got to have them begging. I don't know if that's the right word, right? But going up to you and pleading and saying, "We need to change. Matt, go faster. We need to change." Not, "I'm resisting the change."
Yeah.
But once you have that detach, we had when we were building, we had a state permit. We were building this DPC. We had them at the picnic, the Christmas party, and gave away teddy bears, and we redecorated an ambulance, which was our mobile clinic. And we're trying to get in front of them. And I've been telling them this for months and months and months. I had people coming to me and say, "I know the clinic's not done, but could the clinic start early and see me in a conference room or something?" And so we actually did that for like 2 or 3 months based on employees' request, right?
Yeah.
See, I had them asking for change, not pushing them into the change. There's a very big difference in the mindset there.
Yeah. Can you maybe speak to that a little bit more in depth? Because I just had this conversation with that employer that I mentioned yesterday, we had a conversation because they're restructuring their insurance committee right now. And they kind of want us to start from square one and educating the insurance committee on, hey, how did we make this choice? And I think that's super important, because if we've got people leaving the insurance committee and new people coming on, they need to be educated on why this option is, why we went with this option. But then also starting to get them bought into the strategy, so that way they can be those culture drivers within their departments. Because once you do go self-funded, I mean, it's a group effort. It's not just HR pushing the initiative or the C-suite. It needs to be complete buy-in from top to bottom, because I think people are so used to just having some service done, and they say, "Well, my insurance paid for it." It's like, well, how'd your insurance pay for it? You're through your premiums. And so it's not your insurance company paying for it. You're paying for it. You are the insurance company. You're self-funding your own claims. So it's in your best interest to be a good consumer of healthcare. But part of that is like what Skip said, you got to slow down. Obviously emergencies are emergency, get to the emergency room, but a lot of healthcare consumerism, it's planned, it's schedulable, it's shoppable. And so just being able to, educate the employee population that, hey, just slow down. We've got the right tools and resources in place at your disposal. Utilize them, and try and build that culture of being good consumers of healthcare, because it's not only going to help themselves, but the rest of the group.
Yeah. I think you can only lead as fast as the people you're leading are willing to go, and a lot of that is how you lead them. But yeah, I think there's maybe a misunderstanding too about somehow this is a fast change. It doesn't have to be. I think from an advisor perspective, right, if there are advisors out there, you're gonna, I think, just say we're actually on your side. We're not going to tell you good news on a 12%, but we're going to have to absorb a lot of these broken things. We'll absorb your fully insured plan, or whatever it may be, your self-funded plan that's acting like a fully insured plan, right? How's your plan funded? How's your plan spend? Just because you changed how your plan's funded and self-funded doesn't mean you've got to the root cause of how you're spending it. So if you're self-funded, that's a great first step. DPC is a great first step, but this is a long haul. Let's absorb 90% of the broken. We'll change 10% this year, maybe 10 or 20% next year. And this is going to be a journey. I think one thing that people don't understand from the outside is that inside these companies, these big companies, even if you have somebody like me, like who is motivated for change, If I had a nickel for every time I got shot down, and I got better at it as I matured and got older. When I was young, I'd have a good idea and I'd just go spill it all. I didn't even ask if the person had a minute. I'd jump into the CEO's office and I'd spill it all, and they'd be, I don't know. I think we need to focus on our staffing right now. But thank you for your inspiration, Matt. You gotta. When I was talking to the president at Merrill Steel, I'd be like, at the end of a meeting, I'd catch him. I'd just say, I've been looking into this healthcare stuff. It's our third biggest spend, and I'm seeing some real opportunities. But I'll catch you later. Intentionally, I'll catch you later. He's like, oh, good. Oh, interesting. Okay. And I do that again and again and again. And pretty soon he's like, Matt, tell me about this. Tell me about this. Right? Instead of dumping my bucket in his lap when he's thinking about 5 other things and too busy to even, And so then, because I need those people's support, there were 2 brothers and a sisters in their 70s, late 60s. The sister was right beside me. As an owner of the company, you need that, because when things get bumpy in that desert, you need that person saying, keep going, Matt. It's okay. Keep going. That is in, Matt, your job's at risk. What the hell are you doing? Because that is so scary for an internal person to maneuver those things, that I think it's often under-realized. You look at the HR, why don't you just make a change? It's just not that easy. They need the CEOs and the owner's support, and everyone needs to understand this, or when things get tough, you might go back.
Yeah, that's very powerful analogies of the Red Sea and the desert. And a reminder to the audience that easy is not a word you'll find in the Bible, right? So you've got to have hope and you got to have faith in what's going on. But I think it's also a reminder for the brokers, because I've seen people stumble as brokers. They think that they're selling a traditional product, and then it's, hey, I'm going to check back in you next year. How are the kids? And here's your renewal. There is a massive amount of engagement. And I think I've said this in a previous episode. It's 4 to 5x the work for us to really get these launched correctly. And it's also the expectations. I talked to a group last week, and I'll have to introduce him to you, Matt. I'm going to get him on the FMMA, by the way, so remind me after the meeting. But he's working for a public body, a school system, and he's like, yeah, this thing's broken, and I need to figure this out. And he's already doing self-funded one of his other entities that he represents. And so I was just educating him on these programs. And I told him, I said, look, if we go all in on this is going to be like buying 5 houses. But we're going to be right there with you. And we're going to work tirelessly for you. But once we go down this road together, we're building a tree, right? And you can't build a tree unless you got all the people that are involved in, planting that seed and watering that tree, that sapling, and putting up the guardrails on that so it doesn't blow over in a wind. We can build that tree together, but we need to have a collective effort from the management and the people that are in the C-suite, because I think that's where the brokers miss the boat on this. They think that this thing's going to be maybe easy, but for us, for example, we're going to take a path less traveled. We're now at the point where we're not going to write these large groups without a DPC. I mean, if there's a DPC involved in that area, it's going to happen. But what I think we fall short as brokers in these programs, and they are relatively new, is we don't set the expectations for the employer. This is what it's going to look like, and this is, but it's going to be great when we get through this. And there are going to be some rocky roads, and it's not going to be perfect. And I think we oversell the expectations. This is the promised land. There's my other analogy for you, bud.
Yeah.
So
I love it. I think, just acknowledging really hard, but really worth it.
Yeah.
Because if this notion is that it's easy, well, then they're going to give up on the first bump. And
Well, we've mentioned the FMMA a handful of times.
Yeah.
Maybe we can do a little bit of a deeper dive for any listeners that are not familiar with the Free Market Medical Association. So, Matt, maybe you want to provide some education on that organization that you are now the executive director for.
Yeah. I think I met Keith Smith, who is the co-founder of Surgery Center of Oklahoma, also the co-founder of the Free Market Medical Association, which is now over a decade old. I met him somewhere around 17 or 18. And and I think I called them. And so I was leading in Wisconsin almost like a parallel, what we called the healthcare best practice group, because when we started having success at Merrill Steel and all these awards came in and word got out that that we had done some good things with healthcare, and my phone started ringing big time. Like, how'd you do it? And I'm like, I want to help people, but I can't talk to other employers all day, right? So we need some structure here. So I said, let's just start this healthcare best practice group, and we'll meet every so often, and I'll share, and you guys can all share too, and we'll all share best practices. Innovations, by the way, models are just best practices glued together, a whole bunch of them, right? Mm-hmm. So we did that. I think the first meeting we had 4 people, and but then that took off. And so as we grew that, when I was with Self Fund Health 5 years later, this is now turned into kind of a newsletter and email list, but over 20,000 people on this list, and it was free. But I called FMMA, and like, I should probably just, maybe I should just be the chapter leader because I'm a member of FMMA, but maybe it'd be better to wear that hat. And they're like, yeah, we agree. Call Brian Erdman. He's a doctor. He's the one leader there. You can join him. Make sure he's good with it. I already knew Brian. Called him. He's like, I'd love to have you. That'd be awesome. So we joined. And then as I co-founded Self Fund Health, I started roaming about the state. I had more freedom. And we took the DPCs from 15 in 2020 to 140 today. And DSC, direct specialty care, jumped in as well. And then we really kind of blew up this movement, right? Mm-hmm. We and many doctors and many employers and Self Fund Health and a whole bunch of people came together. And then the last summer, I talked to Jay Kempton as the other co-founder, and they saw what I did in Wisconsin. I presented on it at the National FMMA conference. The book was out there, and they're kind of, they're like, we'd like you to be this person. We love, we're fully aligned. We love what you're doing. And so now my scope has changed. My scope is national, supporting the national chapters as you guys, and mustering kindred spirits, right? Bringing together people like us, PLUs, as I call them, as a friend from, I think he lives in Ohio. Bob told me that phrase. So I give credit to Bob on that one. But right, this is a national movement. I say, join the FMMA, join the movement. What are we? We don't offer legal advice. We don't offer payroll help. We're not one of those associations, but we are the hub of the movement. We're made up of physicians. We're made up of advisors. We're made up of employers, many others, all the people that swim in the self-funded pond, and health shares and all sorts of things. Anyone that supports free market, if you want to try to fix healthcare, I'd say come join us, because I think we're going forward much, much faster now. And I've got a strategy, and I'm pretty excited about that. I think it's going to work. You could call me a mover and a shaker, and you can mock me and say, that's really cute, Matt. That's a really cute idea, just as they did at Merrill Steel when I was talking like this. But I really feel like this is going to work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say my first FMMA conference was like my second aha moment, in this business, because to your point exactly, there was physicians in the room, there was a handful of advisors in the room, there was employers in the room, and I think that's how this thing gets solved. Trying to remove as many middlemen as possible and getting the right people at the table to have these discussions. And so that's kind of the whole concept of, community connected health. And so as we're meeting with employers, not only are we doing discovery with them to figure out what their problems are and what their current situation looks like, but we're also trying to identify, okay, who are the DPCs in their area? Who are the specialty care in their area? Who's the hospital system? So on and so forth, to try and figure out how we can connect this thing together by removing all those, misaligned middlemen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the FMMA stands for the Free Market Medical Association. How could they reach out to you, Matt, and be a part of this movement? And we'd love to see you. We're going to be in Oklahoma City next year at the National. So, that's just a lot of momentum going in. The last one I was at, it was pretty jam packed. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was the who's who in healthcare, pharmacists, providers, subject matter experts, government officials were even there. I mean, I thought, and I'll just add one last thing. I think there was like maybe 100 medical students there, the last one. And so they were like, yeah, we wanted to show up to this thing because we're just not quite sure what we're getting ourselves into. And they came out there, and it was like a very evangelical event for them. Like, yeah, this is what we want to do. And we're actually seeing DPC telling us, we have doctors now over in Des Moines telling us, yeah, the CEO said, yeah, my 2 sons went to medical school. They found out about DPC, and they said, this is how we're going to run our practice. We're not even going to get into private. So anyway, how do we get a hold of you? And we want to hear about your books too. So throw that in for good measure.
Yeah, there's a few organizations. Benjamin Rush organization supports the medical students in just making free choices. A couple of probably the easiest ways to get a hold of me are LinkedIn. Is one way you can find me. If not, matt@fmma.org is an email that you can reach me at. So would love to hear from you. We'd love just to chat. I've been meeting so many physicians and so many advisors and people, and our membership is really rapidly growing in the last year. Now, one thing with the FMMA you have to realize is we're not just about numbers. We're not trying to put on some dog and pony show conference. We're really about keeping our salt as well. So we're pretty picky about that. But the growth of the right folks is good. Growth of fancy fakers, we're not really interested in that. They can go to other conferences, but we're interested in a peer movement and realizing the world's not perfect, so we get it. But those who have good motives and aren't deceiving, and those who have the courage and temerity to do these things. I talk to physicians every day, and I've been asking them questions now, and a lot of times they'll tell me, I'm like, do you feel alone? Like, and they're like, yeah, everyone around me is playing the status quo. And I'm like, well, at the FMMA, you won't feel alone. In fact, I can network you with hundreds and hundreds of people that are thinking just like you. And they can share experiences and mistakes and learnings and how they succeeded. And that's the fastest way you can do what you wanted to do when you went to medical school. So, I mean, it's a networking group that is pretty tight and pretty unique. And I believe we're the hub of the movement. I think there's many great organizations out there, but I don't think there's anyone quite like the FMMA and where we're going. I'm really excited about where we're going because I tell folks I'm not interested in looking like we're doing good things or dabbling in this. I really would like a free market in about 5 years. So I may fail at that, and that's okay. But when I'm sitting in my rocking chair, I may have some stories, and they may be failure stories. That's okay, but I'll have stories. I won't be silent. So
you already have stories, and you're going to build a lot of great stories. And that's how I want to finish. I want to finish strong. I got in an argument with my family a number of years ago, and I held up 7 fingers. And I said, how many fingers am I holding up? They said, 7. And I said, well, each one of those represent a decade. I've got, peace. I want to make a difference. And use your time valuably, but this is a very, very exciting time. And I know I overemphasize that, and I get pretty emotional on these podcasts, but we're seeing it. And keep up the great work. And what are your 2 books? You just published one. Tell our listeners about your books.
Yeah, and a quick point. I always say too, we're already going to work. We're already putting on. If you're Skip, you're putting on your 3-piece suit every day. You're already doing this, right? You might as well go out and make a splash, because you're already doing it. You're already going through the motions, and sure, there's some risk there. But yeah, the first book it took me a long time to write, and so many iterations and adjustments, but it came out in July of 23. You can kind of see it in the shelf behind me, and the one in the middle, Save Your Company, Don't Feed the Beast, is at the 3-year mark, is trending to have around 10,000 copies sold. When I wrote it, I said, maybe my mom will buy it. I don't, that's not why I'm writing it. Right.
Sounds like my musical career. Yeah.
I didn't know what would happen, but I said, if it can make a difference, then it'd be great. But I'm going to do it. It's kind of one of those life, experiences. I'm going to write it and I'm going to finish it. It was hard. And then I've also written one on foster care, which is on Amazon. You can just search my name, Matt Ohrt. And then recently, I don't know how long, several months ago, late last summer, I think I partnered with Shane Purcell, who's an MD, a DPC owner from Georgia, and we wrote "Good Care Feels Different," and it's and DPC for you and me. It's a very short, almost like a children's book, and it often gets mistaken as a children's book. It's not. It's meant for adults, but it's meant to be a book you could hand someone and just say, "What's DPC?" "Oh, here you go. Read this." And they'll have a pretty good idea of what DPC is and why it's such a big deal in this movement.
Terrific. Are we?
I think we'll wrap it there, unless you have any final words for us.
I have one tricky question. What's one thing you'd tell your former HR self?
I wish I would have opened my eyes much sooner.
Yeah.
The more questions I asked, the more inspired I got, the more I learned. Trust those, know who you can trust. And there's a lot of folks that are really great at posing as trust around you, such as advisors. But they're the ones making all the money and you're the one getting screwed. So I'd say you're going to have a little skepticism going into this, and realizing these good guy advisors like yourselves, right? They're not perfect either. But you got to have somebody that's on your side and that's really with you as you go through this. That'd be your first choice, is have the right advisor. So I got fooled for decades by people that took me out to lunch and all sorts of things, PBMs that took me even to a Bucks game. But I realized that their motives were not good. And so that would be a good first step.
Perfect. Thank you, Matt. Appreciate your time.
Great to see you, pal. Appreciate everything. Go Blue, and have a great weekend, and happy everything to you, man.
Yeah, sounds great, guys. Great discussions. Keep in touch.